maintained by women.
Do you think that in a society without men, women couldn't do these things? Like you're picking
Yes.
the most, not to
Yes.
sound mean, but
Yes,
like
I
you're
think they
picking like the
couldn't.
bottom.
Yes.
These are the bottom men of society. These are the, not to be mean, but these are the bottom of the of all men.
Electricians are the bottom of society. That's interesting.
I'm sorry.
Andrew Wilson from The Crucible absolutely destroys Destiny in this heated debate, and in this clip, Destiny and Andrew Wilson clash over the patriarchy and men's roles in society, as the Wiki Warrior Destiny keeps trying to win a point, and Andrew Wilson just chops down Destiny again and again, and eventually, Destiny goes into full tantrum mode, and it's hilarious, folks. Let's jump in.
Failing.
How are they failing?
Yeah, but you just said you were safe, Angela, so I don't know that they're failing, right? I don't know if that's...
It's just right now, we like the way that society works, we have a whole, like, it's men don't do anything. It's the massive institutions that we've created around our countries that ensure rights. You don't get rights from men. You get rights from the protections that the institutions of government have guaranteed you, right? There are men in all sorts of different countries, but the rights that women have afforded to them dramatically vary from country to country, regardless of what man is going to protect them. You know, you might have the strongest male defender ever in Afghanistan, but it doesn't mean you're going to college if you're a woman there. And also just when you compare country to country and you're looking for like, what are the most successful countries? It's not the ones with the most alpha men or the most manly men protecting the rights. It's generally you're looking for things like, do women have access to birth control, and are they participating in the economy? So I don't know. It's just like, it's a very crude argument.
Well, there's a bunch of things that are kind of smuggled in there, right? So the first thing is kind of smuggled in is you talk about institutions being the protectors of rights. Institutions are just a coalition of people, individuals. They're going to rely on the enforcement arm also of men. You say it's not masculine men who are defending these rights. However, it is masculine men who are in the military, in law enforcement, things like this, who are the enforcement arm of these rights, who these government institutions rely heavily on in order to enforce what their will is. So it always does come down to enforcement.
Do you think then that the countries where women have the most rights are the countries with the most masculine, strong men?
So they're not mutually exclusive or non-exclusive.
I didn't say they're mutually exclusive. I'm asking because you make it sound like it's just strong men that grant rights. So does that mean that if I were to look at all the women's rights in the world,
there's a problem there? There's a smuggle in again where you say strong masculine men are the only ones doing them. I'm just saying men as the default are the ones who are doing this.
Wait, but why you say men are the default? Like we can run that back a little bit more reductively. Shouldn't it be 6 feet or taller men? Like don't all men that are 5'8" and lower get their rights from men that are 6 feet and taller?
No.
Why not?
Because they don't have a non-equalization on force. A 5'8" person can defend themselves against a 6 foot person.
In general, do you think that's true?
I think that there are some advantages, but if you're going to do that, then on average,
no, not some advantages. I'm saying on average, if we look at combat sports with no weight classes, you think 5'8" men are defending?
Well, hang on. So if we're going to use averages, then let's use averages and say that we have an average for a reason, because most men are inside of that average, right? So if that's true, then most of the men who would be falling in these jobs are going to be within that average, Destiny. So
sure, but I'm just asking if we run this all the way back. So any man that's below the average height, any man that's 5'9" or lower, their rights are also being defended by men that are 6'2" and taller.
Well, no, that wouldn't be a direct correlate for equalization, because men who are 6 foot, there's far fewer of them than men who are in the average aggregate. So therefore, the force equalization is different. However, if you're looking at the force differential from men to women, the average is so lopsided that even weak men can generally defend themselves fairly well against strong women.
If you want to do force equalization there, then shouldn't we be looking at people that prefer a heavily patriarchal society versus people that prefer a more egalitarian one? And the force equalization for women on the egalitarian one would be probably that most men would side with that over the ones that want the heavily patriarchal one?
Yeah, but that would go with my point, which is that men are the ones who are the rights givers.
But men aren't just the rights givers there, because a coalition of 5'9" and shorter men with women are probably going to defend rights more than a coalition of 6 foot plus alpha men.
But the distinction there is that you said it yourself, it would be a coalition of men and women, but it'll never be women. So it'll always have to be men.
And it'll never be 5'8" and lower men, I don't think,
no,
right?
It will always be. The default will always go to men. Men can always enforce their rights collectively.
Okay, so you just want to arbitrarily cut it off at just men, but not go into any of the delineations.
I just went into every delineation with you. Which one would you like to go into?
I mean, I already said it. I think that you could argue that like taller men are the ones that run society, and shorter men only exist in society essentially at the behest of larger men, basically.
Yeah, but we just covered this. That's true. You could say that, but if you're looking at an average, then you're saying that the men who are outside of the average are fewer in number than the men who are in the average. So they're outnumbered. So I don't know what your point is.
I mean, it could be the slightly taller men could probably take on 1.5 shorter men. I'm sure we could find some average where 30% of men in society can run the other 70%.
And it's still
just like
men.
nobody looks at,
And it's
yeah,
still
I think
men.
sure.
That's the
Yeah,
point.
it is.
Poor Destiny is just trying to make a point, and Andrew Wilson's, I mean, like, all he's saying is that it's reliant on men to enforce anything. It's always been that way. Like, who's the police? Who's the army? Who's the this? And Destiny's points of what the taller ones are the ones who are going to rule everyone else. Really? Like, go look at the military and look at the special forces. Go look at the baddest dudes in there. They're not 6'2" giants or anything like that. Like, you can't go on a 2-week long mission weighing 270, carrying an 80-pound backpack. A lot of these guys are mid-size. For one, that's the general population of men. And plus, like, when you're out in the military, it's stamina, it's endurance. The bigger you are, the harder it is to go for longer and longer. Like, eventually your weight becomes a limitation. So that doesn't even work in that category. Being bigger and more powerful, to Destiny's point, is going to work in that split second moment where you have to get into a fight. Like, that's how that's going to work. So bouncer, protection, maybe instance of a police officer, but like, can you run after a criminal for 2 miles or something like that? I don't know. You're probably going to be better off on the small guy. I mean, Andrew Wilson's point is very similar. I think Destiny is just trying to make something up, but let me know in the comments, what do you think? But I like, it's always funny watching Destiny try to debate, because Andrew Wilson is so linear with his step-by-step, and Destiny just bounces around. Like, you can see the difference. Like, it's just embarrassing. Poor Destiny.
Men, but now I'm going into height. But you want to go back on just the man, the fact that it's like the man thing. But again, and to go very broad, because now, I mean, I feel like we kind of see how ridiculous the argument is, and just like saying just men.
I haven't heard you refute it.
Broadly speaking, right, it's hard to refute because it's almost unfalsifiable, because you're talking about half the population of the planet, right? Like, how am I supposed to refute that men are important in voting rights? There are no countries that exist without men. But when I try to think of like, well, what's the refutation of this? Here would be an interesting thing. Do the countries with the strongest men have the most rights? Not really, no. In fact, just the opposite. I remember hearing so many jokes about how because Russia is so masculine and manly that all the trans Ukrainian soldiers were going to be getting murdered by the brave Russian soldiers. And here we've got drone operators, tossing grenades on Russian troops blowing themselves, right? So it doesn't seem to be the case that like just strong men are a good predictor of rights.
So hang on, wait a second.
Go for it.
So men can take your rights away in those other countries too?
No, not just men. Those countries can take your rights away. You need a whole
using
institution.
the enforcement arm of who? Which sex do you think's the enforcement arm?
Countries are powered by men and women. When the Soviet Union beat
is the enforcement
Nazi
arm?
Germany, when the Soviet, it's not just about the enforcement arm. Who's giving them the arms to enforce?
Usually other men.
Who manufactures the guns? Who
The men.
manufactures?
Do you think that there's female gun makers all over the world, or what?
Yeah,
bro?
who do you think was working production in World War II when all of our men were going overseas?
They weren't designing the guns. They were literally on an assembly line putting a fucking screw in a fucking piece of metal. They weren't designing weapons. What world do you live in?
That's great. And at the end of the day, both jobs matter. You could be the best engineer in the world. If you don't have somebody building your shit, it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah, that's
right?
nice. Women can be a labor force if men allow them to. That's fantastic.
Sure. And what I'm saying, you can say if men allow them to, however you want to say it or whatever, but the reality is at the end of the day, it's not just men, right? You need both halves of society working together to actually fucking accomplish anything. So there is no society or country that's like...
You're smuggling in just men again. You're smuggling in just men. What I'm saying to you specifically is that men are the enforcement arm, and nobody's building shit if men say no. That's what I'm saying. Women aren't going to be able to go to men and say, no, you know what? We're going to do it anyway if men don't want them to, Destiny. That's the distinction.
Well, I disagree with what you're saying because I understand what you're saying. It sounds great on paper, but if we again look at the stats right now, the suicide rates are up. Men are dying. Men aren't going to school. They've dropped out of school during COVID.
Yeah, but hold on, Angela. The point of the patriarchy wasn't to just do the point of the what do you say in the patriarchy? It wasn't that all men do better. Because I've heard this argument before. Yes, men are going to commit suicide more because there's men at the bottom of society that are not benefiting from this patriarchy. Right? Does that make sense? So I've heard the argument before, like the idea that men are suffering isn't really the reason why the patriarchy isn't working. It's like the point he's trying to make is Andrew's, guys, tell me if I'm wrong here. Andrew's trying to say that the foundation of society, there are men who have to enforce and to take certain jobs that have to do with military, law enforcement, etc. And what Destiny is saying is that while that is a part of society, and probably a more important part of society in the past, today it's a less important society because we have technology, because we have, someone who's a computer programmer, doesn't matter if they're a man or a woman, people can be successful entrepreneurs and be men or women. And I totally understand both parts of those. But my issue, the initial thing that I was saying before, was that because men generally are more aggressive, they're going to fill more parts of that society, being entrepreneurs, being CEOs of companies, being in the U.S. military, being bodyguards, and stuff like that. So,
I think that.
Go ahead, Angela. Sorry.
No, sorry.
Yeah. So I mean, I hear everything you guys are saying, but this all sounds like it's just like labor force jobs. But meanwhile, like the society is thriving off of multiple things that doesn't require you to just be like a fucking barbarian. So I don't understand why we continue to go back to the state of mind.
Because both things are important. Because both things
are important, but it's completely just highlighted in the fact that it's only men. But if you really look at it, women are thriving in it. Women are working more. 7.2 million men aren't working. So what are those men doing that they're contributing to the patriarchy that's so important that men can't enforce those guys who aren't working, who aren't doing shit? So I'm confused.
Wait a second. Women are only able to work in modernity the way that they are because men maintain the entirety of the infrastructure inside of every single nation on the planet. Women do not maintain infrastructure. Their top jobs are teaching, serving, things like this. They don't work in infrastructure. They don't work in paving the roads. They don't work with the air conditioners. They don't work with the electricity. They don't work with any of these things. At a very low scale, do they work in any of these industries? The scales are so lopsided that you almost can just take the women out because they're so irrelevant to most of these industries. So the thing is I got to ask you, like you say women are doing all these great things. It's like they're all enabled by the patriarchal system, which literally has men competing with men, which we're supposed to be doing, and we love to do that, for status, for all of these different things. But the entirety of the world that you live in currently, that women are thriving in, all of it is maintained by men, and very little of it is maintained by women.
Do you think that in a society without men, women couldn't do these things? Like you're picking the most, not to sound mean, but like you're picking like the bottom. These are the bottom men of society. These are not to be mean, but these are the bottom of the
electricians are the bottom of society. That's interesting.
I'm sorry.
And see, this is the thing with leftists, like Destiny and this other chick over here. They think that everything was built on a system. You can't take out the foundations that held it up all along just because we have technology and this and that. Women like this are so entitled, they don't understand. Everything that keeps the lights on, that keeps the gas flowing, the oil flowing. Look, at a certain point, when we covered all of the basics, that's when we had an explosion in all sorts of other services and all sorts of other jobs. But that was only because men, like Andrew Wilson pointed out, were the ones keeping everything up. So that's the foundation, and everything is built on top of that. But you could knock that stuff off the top and still have a society running. You couldn't take out the bottom because the top would just implode on itself. And that's the difference. It's like Andrew Wilson gets it. It's like every society. You can't find me a society in history, it's never occurred, where women just got up and just built an empire all on their own. It's never happened. So everything that Destiny and this other chick is talking about is based on a theory. It's based on a theory. That's all they've got. And they're willing to basically rest an argument to define all of human civilization on a theory that's untested and that you can see throughout society right now is causing huge problems. And at the end of the day, when stuff falls and stuff collapses, who picks it up? Who's going to clean it up? Who's going to have to rebuild? It's going to be men, just like it is in every society, like Andrew Wilson pointed out. But let me know in the comments what you thought about what Andrew Wilson had to say to poor old Wiki Warrior Destiny. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, take care, and I'll see you on the next one.